Hey there, I'm Keith, and this is the OC Mega 22S production monitor. I originally reached out to OC about a year ago, and I was going to make a video going over why you need a production monitor and features and benefits, kind of a video. They sent the monitor, but I never made the video, so I did spend the year using this monitor. So this video slowly morphed into my thoughts and opinions on the monitor and less about specs about this monitor. The first thing I wrote down, and the reason this monitor caught my attention in the first place, was the price for the features that it has. This is a 22-inch monitor. It has 1500 nits, 2 SDI connections, and an HDMI. For some reason, that's a very weirdly expensive monitor. This really checked a lot of the boxes that I was looking for in a pretty attractive price point. The next thing I wrote down, and this is more of an intangible benefit, like I would not have got this if I was gonna make that initial like specs video, but clients love a production monitor. If a client is going to pay you for bringing out the cart, I have a battery, and they're paying for the monitor and all the wireless transmitters and cables and all this stuff, it really does help elevate their experience to give them a chair, let them put their water bottle down on a place and just be able to sit and watch the monitor. They don't have to look over my shoulder while I'm using the camera to try to see what I'm filming, because they have a reference of what I'm filming and they don't have to move at all. They can just give feedback or say, that was great, let's move on to the next one. The next thing I wrote down was you can put it on a table or a stand. This has a integrated stand adapter, and it also has feet on it. At first, I didn't understand because I thought I was always gonna put it on a stand, like I have it right here. But whenever I take it out of the case, I'm not always just slapping it on the stand, I'm putting it down. Or for small shoots, like if I'm just having one camera and they still want the monitor, being able to put it down on a table and we don't have to get the card out and all this stuff. I also have been using it to film top-down stuff. This is my top-down setup here, and I'll put the production monitor right here, and I'll just sit there in front of the camera and be able to have a humongous screen instead of a 7-inch screen. And I've been filming like a lot of like little small springs and parts and stuff lately, so being able to see the details and make sure everything's sharp on a big monitor has been pretty awesome, even in place of an onboard monitor sometimes. The last thing I wrote down about the stand versus feet thing is I found myself, even if, I hope clients aren't hearing this, even if the clients don't want to pay for the cart and the battery and the stand and monitor, if they want the monitor, then they'll just end up getting the cart and the battery because it's that much easier. I have a power strip on the side of the cart that plugs into the battery. So if a client has a laptop or an iPad or their phone or anything needs to be charged, just plug it into this and they can roll the cart around with me anywhere we're going. And it just makes the day easier. That leads into my next pro about this, is that there is a V-mount plate straight on the back of it. So you can just plug a V-mount battery straight into the back. When I first got this, I didn't have that DJI power battery yet. And I was just using this with a V-mount battery on the back. And I had a splitter, and I would just use a D-tap splitter and power my transmitter right here. So even if you don't have a whole setup, you can use the V-mount battery with a D-tap splitter and use your wireless transmitter and still be able to like pick this thing up and move it around, and you're not tethered to an outlet. So I love that for moving quickly and moving around to different locations. Or if you're in an area that doesn't have AC power, just slapping a V-mount battery on the back of something is much easier than dealing with like cables and all that stuff. The next thing I wrote down is I love that it's HDMI and SDI. When I originally saw the $10,000 price tag of those small HD monitors, I was like, oh, I'll just use a regular computer monitor. $200, super easy. The problem with that is, well, there's a lot of problems with that, but one of the main ones was it doesn't have SDI. And if you're using transmitters, you're probably going to be dealing with SDI cables, and this has 2 SDI inputs and an HDMI. So I love that it's geared towards production environments and there's tools, but having that SDI cable and the panel quality was one thing that led me to this instead of a computer monitor. That one was a little rambly, sorry. The next thing I wrote down was another reason I wanted this monitor in particular is because the shipping packaging that it comes in can fit in a Pelican 1600 case. So I ended up going on eBay and buying this case. This is actually a Starlink case. That's why it has this like weird thing in the middle of. This is like where you put it down on the ground and then shove the Starlink thing in there. But whatever. Someone had an old Starlink and was getting rid of it, and that was like $50 on eBay. So the fact that it comes with pre-cut out foam that perfectly fits this monitor and all the accessories was something that was really interesting to me too, because if I have a very expensive monitor, I want to be able to transport it in a safe way, because if I'm just like shoving this in my car, I don't want the screen to get messed up. Another thing that comes with this monitor in particular is a screen protector. I actually just like kind of tape this over it. I probably could put it on, but having a screen protector, for some reason, people like to go, hey, can we do this over here? And they just like smear your monitor. It kind of drives me nuts a little bit. So if I'm going to be with clients that I know are going to be pointing at the monitor, I'll just, kind of like tape this up over it. But this does come with the monitor. The next thing I wrote down was exposure tools were something I thought I would use a lot on this monitor. And over the last year, I don't think I used the exposure tools really at all on this monitor, because if I'm using my camera, I have my exposure tools and my peaking and all this stuff set up on my onboard monitor, and I can access it really fast because I do it all the time. On my production monitor, I'm typically not sitting behind this monitor. This is for the client. Or if you have a first AC, I guess I have F4 set up to my false color. So I guess if you have a savvy client or an assistant that's also watching after the image, making sure nothing's clipping or something, all of the exposure tools you would expect to be in this monitor are here. But what I actually was using a lot is F3 on my monitor, and this is the frame guides. There are a couple of different ones that you can set up, but I find myself just using the plain old rule of thirds grid, because if you want to line something up for social and while you're shooting horizontal video. Speaking of tools, the next thing I wrote down was that the menus took me a little while to get used to. If you're trying to navigate through here, you can do so with this joystick here. And it took me a little while to learn all of these and like be able to customize them and figure them out. That's probably going to be true with any monitor, but I had to take some setup time with this, and once I did it, I didn't have to do it again, but it was something that I wrote down, so I wanted to include that. Another thing that stood out to me about this monitor is that you can color calibrate it yourself. There is a USB-C port in the back here. If you plug the calibration probe into here and then put it on the screen, go through this menu item, it will take care of it for you. OC color calibrated this before they sent it to me, so I haven't done that yet. It's coming up on that year, so I probably should. But I color calibrate all of my other monitors, and I want to make sure that they're all looking the same. And I don't trust my eyes, and I use my exposure tools and all this stuff to make sure that, like, according to the data, the image is exposed correctly. So I want to be able to trust my monitors that the colors are also accurate. The next thing I wrote down was the resolution. This is a 4K monitor, and that was important because I wanted a monitor that could, even if I have a 1080p out to this monitor, I knew in the back of my head I would like to have the option to have a feed of 4 1080p different cameras on this monitor. And the reason I have this all set up is I tried to figure that out, and I got a Blackmagic Multi-View 4, and I have my, my FX3 right now, but if I toggle over to SDI 1, I have my FX6 and my FX30 back here going into my Hollyland, and I have 2 of these. You can't really see the FX30 really good. Hold on. Now you can see the FX30 a little bit better, but this is the FX30. And here is the FX6. I want to offer this to my clients in the future. I just figured this out. But if someone has an interview that they want to put a lot of effort into with multiple cameras, and they just want to see all the feeds on screen at once in high resolution with like no bitrate issues that the monitoring control app has, I can now offer this to them, and I want to give them like a good experience, because if they're willing to pay for a multi-cam shoot, I want them to have the best experience they can possibly have. Okay, going back to my HDMI to see if I'm still recording myself. Yes, okay, cool. Also, I'm sorry if the lighting isn't that cinematic on this one. I just kind of like put the camera down, turned on a key light, and we're rolling with it. The next thing I wrote down was I would like to have a swivel for this mount in the future. I think you can relocate the VMount plate somewhere, and there's a Visa plate right here that you can actually, there's a couple different designs out there that you can swivel the screen, and I think this would be great for social content. The OC Mega 22S seems to be that sweet spot between a production monitor with production features and a nice, bright, large panel that doesn't break the bank. That was a weirdly difficult thing for me to find before I came across this monitor. My clients have loved it, and now that I have the Multi-View 4 figured out, I can't wait to offer that to my clients. So that's just another offering that I can offer now that I have this monitor. Let me know what you guys think of this monitor or other production monitors that you're using. I would love to know what you guys are doing. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.